Hello, and welcome to the BGIS Project Management Podcast. This podcast is designed to help project managers learn and grow in their careers, all while being entertained. The BGIS Project Management Podcast is both for experts and beginners. We hope to inspire our audience with interviews from project managers from BGIS who will speak about their professional and personal experiences with project management. I invite you into this educational and entertaining space where you can further your professional development at home or on the go. On today's episode, my first guest is Ranjith Siyon PMP, Senior Project Management Manager at BGIS. I've had the pleasure to work on 3 projects with Ranjith, 3 ESAP projects, and I've been receiving his mentorship for over 2 years now. Ranjith, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me today.
You're welcome. So, is this the first time you've ever recorded a podcast?
Actually, yes, it is my first time. I'm not gonna lie. I'm quite excited. I got a mixed feeling, nervous a little bit, but mostly excited to do this.
Good, good. So, speaking of podcasts, what kind of podcasts do you listen to?
To be honest with you, I don't listen to podcasts on a regular basis, but I remember when I was studying for my PMP. So I did just like many others. I did a lot of web research on Google. I found this podcast called. Hold on, I write it down. It's called projectmanagementpodcast.com.
Oh, yeah.
I think most of you guys are familiar
Yeah.
with. Trust me, I was very surprised and overwhelmed how much overwhelming detailed episodes are there. So, what I did, I found few from there. Obviously, I didn't do like this 400. And when I did my exam time, it was like 450 episodes. So I
Wow.
chose some of them that I lacked. I want a little bit more advice on. So I listened to what happened after the PMP. How do you apply your PMP skills? Mentoring is being one of them. So there's tons and tons of them, but the list goes on. So that's what I did. I wish I do it on a regular basis, but when I do get a chance, I do log in and try to choose one and just have that in the background and do my work at the same time. So
Yeah.
that's usually what I do.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, those podcasts can be really, really good. Picking up on little things here and there, and they tend to like stay in our minds. And for something like the PMP, you want that information to be fresh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Like I said, I was very. You see, some speakers are more expert than others, but there's always beginners like us. They come and they talk about the experience. So it's quite. There's variety of episode that you could listen to it, right? So it's pretty interesting. So
Good.
yep.
Yeah. Well, we'll take that experience side and segue into our interview. So tell us about your background and how did you get into project management?
My background is mechanical engineering. So, I've started in 2005. So when you're in mechanical engineering, you indirectly do PM work because
Mhm.
you do the design and you see your design throughout, right? So you do a design and then you do your construction and then you do your follow up. So that aspect of the engineering side, was kind of interesting. So what I did, I obviously pursue my career toward that. And as I grew more as a mechanical engineer, so I said, hey, why not try this, right? So I had a colleague that I worked with on a project, and he was at BGIS at that time. So we worked, together, and I started, liking what he was doing. So
Mhm.
I said, why not give it a shot? So basically, I switched from being a mechanical engineer to an actual project management company. But I was, like I said, indirectly doing that anyway. So I
Yeah.
just joined BGIS and was doing that for like almost 4 years now. So
Oh, wow.
so that's kind of my path of how I got into PM.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through a particularly a challenging project and how you managed past or overcame the obstacles that this challenging project gave you?
Sure. To be honest with you, there's many that I could choose from,
Yeah.
right? So as you know, right?
We've
So
experienced a few together.
being at BGIS has its own challenge, but one that I could really think of, before I get into detail, one that I learned and I keep learning throughout being at BGIS is you need to learn how to put your emotions aside.
Mhm.
Oftentimes you talk to a contractor, it could be internal or it could be external. You don't always have the same opinion or you don't agree on certain things. So what I personally do when that happens to me, I take a break. I
Hmm.
said, okay, let me just disconnect, go for a coffee, go talk to my kids, or because we are working from home, and I'll go do a little workout, or just sit down on a sofa, I just do nothing. So oftentimes when that happens, that's the first thing I do. Um, a good example that a challenge that I had is one of the projects that I worked on. It was clear on a drawing that there was abatement on a certain area, and obviously the contractor overlooked, and there was a dispute just saying, it's not clear, it was this guy finger pointing, right? So that obviously is a big huge challenge, right? So what we end up doing is, we all sat down with the consultants and with the contractor, say, okay, where is the mistake? What's It's not clear on the drawing, what happened? So we came to an agreement that, yes, contractor is right, consultant is right. So what do we do? So we kind of said 50-50, right? So oftentimes, you have to do the right thing, but you have to be fair. So
Hmm.
abatement has always been a huge issue on the project that we are working weekly, because it no matter how clear it is, it's never clear. So there's
Hmm.
always a dispute. There's always, and the contractor is always right. And
Yeah.
the tenant is always right,
Yeah. Exactly.
and the client is always right. So everybody's always
Yeah.
right. So how do you
Yeah.
find that that
Yeah.
balance, right?
Yeah.
So that's why sometimes you put your emotions aside, and then you put your PM at and say, okay, what do I need to do at that stage? So that's kind of how we resolved that issue at that time. We said, okay, let's just agree to disagree. Let's just say, you're 50% responsible, we're 50% responsible, and then we work your way. And obviously there's schedule implication, there's cost implication, and then we went forward and then we resolved that issue. So that was one that still, I remember it was a tough one to deal with, because some contractors are more open and some contractors are more difficult. So
Hmm.
in this case, it was both. So that's kind of how I dealt with it.
There's a big people management aspect to it at the same time, where you're not just resolving that obstacle that showed up in your project, but the people in there. And we can work with complicated contractors the same way as we can work with extremely easy ones, that tend to make our lives easier.
Yep,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. And one thing that you always have to empathize, and then you have to
Hmm.
sympathize,
Hmm.
right? So you need to understand their concern. You can't always be cat and cat, or dogs and dogs. If he's a dog, you try to be a cat, and vice versa, right? So it's more easier said than done. Like I'm talking in my personal experience, right? It's sometime you don't want to give up, but then you empathize with them, and then you sympathize with them. That 5 minutes that you spend changes everything.
Yeah.
It just set the tone, and the person on the other line said, "Huh, this guy is there to listen to me. He's not just being difficult, right?"
Hmm.
So I always apply that technique. Again, like I said, some people are more easy to talk to, some are more difficult. So you get who's who, and then you apply that technique, and that's what I've been doing so far. So,
Yeah.
and it's been working well.
That's actually something I learned from you throughout the projects, where I think at the beginning, when I started working at BGIS in contract management or contract administration, which was relatively new to me, and I would hold on parts of what was like supposed to happen, and I wouldn't let go. I was very unflexible, and I was like, no, 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 this is how it's supposed to be, and you have to conform to this contract. And then you were like, whoa, 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 there's both sides to this, and that was a valuable lesson I learned. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Good. So on your projects, how do you prioritize and manage competing demands and deadlines, which is, very real thing that all project managers across the industries have to deal with. What's your tips and tricks?
I have few. I'm a very visual person. So what do I do? We don't have tons of tools, but we do have good tools at BGIS, which is Microsoft. So I use Microsoft Office quite often, especially Microsoft Outlook. Like I told you, I'm a very visual person. So when we have, let's say, have a deadline, for example, or I have something very important, what do? I color code them. So I color code them by red being obviously the most important that I have to tackle it no matter what. And then I go orange, green, and so on and so forth. So the red one, the way I be on top of these items is I prioritize them and I put a reminder. every day what happened is that that reminder keep popping up until I resolve this issue. So every day when I'm logging, the first thing we always do, what, we open Teams, we open Microsoft
Hmm.
Outlook. So I looked at it and I say, okay, what are the red items that I have to address? So no matter what, even if someone sent me an email today, it doesn't matter, it falls in the below category because I always have to address the priority first. So I've tried many methods. You'll laugh, but I still write it down on my book.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do a checklist on my book. I tried Microsoft. Like I said, one thing that works for me, it won't work for you. But I'm still old school, so I write it down. And sometimes my wife comes and asks, "What are you doing? What are you doing with the color code?" I'm like, "Well, I'm just color coding because red meaning is important." And then I just do a check mark with the green. So that's how I prioritize. I kind of combination of both Microsoft Outlook and manually I write on the book and I say, okay, who do I have to talk to today? This is done. Sometime even with you, I said, hey Mark, let's do this, let's do that. So that's kind of how I prioritize and be on top of what do I have to do. So
Hmm.
that's kind of like the trick that I do that works for me.
Good. Yeah. Well, all roads lead to Rome. So that's a very good trick. Can you talk about a project that you have managed that you're most proud of and why?
Um, I've worked on many projects since I started with BGIS. If I have to name a project that I'm really, really proud of, I would say the Lester B. Pearson project. There's many reason why I chose that project. One, because it was such a complex project.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Lester B. Pearson for
Yeah,
people who are not familiar with it?
sure. So Lester B. Pearson is a huge campus. So the majority of the stakeholder, or you call the tenant, is GAC. It's the Global Affair of Canada. So what we have to do, obviously, part of our project, we had to come and implement the project. So when we started our project, there was already 10 or 11 undergoing project in that campus. So imagine you're just like the guinea pig coming to like a big Goliath. So that's literally how I felt. So there was a lot of challenges. There was health and safety challenges. There was operation challenges. There was tenant challenges on top of the construction management challenges. So we have to play ball with all these stakeholders
Hmm.
because, sorry. So for example, you need a particular room, and that room is not available because X, Y, Z is already taking ownership of that space. So imagine, as you know, our project, our ESAP project, it was very scheduled and cost driven, right? So you come to a program and you come to a project, you have a certain deadline to do it, and there you go, you start your project, and already there's a challenge because there's so many ongoing issues, right?
Yeah.
I still remember there was endless phone conversation, coordination with the tenant, and I remember a particular scenario. There was a space. We needed the space to kind of start. That's really our heart of the project. We need to start. That's where we need to start. And the tenant said, "No, we're not giving you that space because they waited 2 years to get that space."
Yeah.
So then we came together, obviously collectively. We said, okay, what can we do? So what we did, we end up, instead of taking the entire space, we took a portion of the space. So we staggered the work. We phased the work, and then what we did to satisfy the client, we took their equipment and we put it in a separate facility that's monitored, secured, and gave them access. So we came up with some ideas to kind of get us going. And I still remember there was still conversation. It was asking, "Can I get this room?" It's like, "No, you can't have this room." So, but anyways, so we went through a lot of hurdles on that project. But the particular room is being on top of my list because it was took us 2 months to resolve that issue
Hmm.
before we actually get the construction going.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say as a challenge that I had on that project.
That's a feat of coordination. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, like I wouldn't say the tenant was difficult, but because they were kind of fed up because they were
Yeah.
told that you could have this room, and then we come back as a new project. Hey, by the way, you can't have this room because we need to implement this project, right? So, but at the end of the day, we found solution. We came together. We came with ideas,
Hmm.
contractors, tenant, stakeholders. Everybody came together and say, hey, let's do this, and it worked. And you know yes, it took time, but we at the end of the day we came up with a plan and we stick to a plan and we executed the plan. So
Yeah.
that's what happened.
I find that in generally in construction, we often fight a stigma that people have when we start a project. It's like, oh, great, there's going to be construction. They're going to take all of our space. We're going to have to work around them. They're going to be noisy. It's going to be dirty. We have to fight that stigma. So when we ask permission to enter a space, people are quick to say, no, 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 no. not in my backyard. You're not doing construction here, and it can be really difficult.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And the other problem is it's not that they don't want to. They just, they like tired of seeing the construction
Yeah,
happen. They're just like, hey, I have this space. I've been told I could use it, but then hey, you can't use it,
yeah,
right? So it's it's unfortunate, but at the end, the reason we're doing it's is for the best, right?
hmm
Is we're making things better.
yeah,
We updating the infrastructures. We make it more safer, more um, how do you say, it's not something that we're doing hey because we need to do it. No, we're doing because there's a reason why we do it, because of the safety reason. The building is old, we have to change this because you're going to benefit from this. Yes, there's this interim period that you're going to suffer, but the long term it's better, right?
yeah.
So that's the message that is often hard to get it across, but with perseverance people try to understand, but
Yeah.
it takes time.
Tenant improvement. We're here to make your lives better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Can you speak to us about um, effective communication and collaboration within your projects? How do you promote that? And we know communication is probably one of the number one things that we need to do in our projects.
Yeah, so I usually this I learned actually from my direct reports, and also I learned it from my supervisor, right? So the way that I usually do communication is I do follow-ups, right? If there's an important item, for example, I need to be resolved. I usually 9 out of 10 would talk to that person. I say, hey, this is what needs to be done. Do you understand what the requirements are? And then I follow up with an email or a chat or via Teams. I very rarely just forward emails. Say, hey, here's the communication. Just deal with it. No, it. Sometimes the way that I perceive or I understand is different, right? So I try always to talk to that person and say, hey, you have to call this person, for example. Hey, when you do call this person, make sure that you ask these questions.
Hmm.
So it's easy to say, hey, please look at the email below. But I've been doing that. I'm not gonna lie, but I try to change the method and I try to spend more time with that person. Hey, because like I said, what I have in my mind, you might not understand.
Yeah.
So I try to call them, hey, Mark, hey, do you understand what you have to do? Not that you don't understand, just because I want to make sure the message is clear so you don't waste your time
Yeah.
and I don't waste my time, right?
Exactly.
So that's often how I manage communication. I usually just try to, focus what's required and get straight to the point and make, like I say, we have teams with the technology we have. I just give them a call and say, hey, this is what we need to do. A, B, and C. Is this clear? Yes. Okay. Chapter close.
Yeah.
And then I go from there.
I remember this reminds me of something I read when I was studying the PMP. And I think it's called the feedback technique, where you explain something to someone, like especially when it comes to instructions, and then you ask them, okay, now repeat to me what you understood. And then the person repeats it and it's like, okay, perfect. We're both on the same path, And, yeah, it's a great method, great technique.
Thanks.
So can you discuss a time in a project that didn't go as planned, something that went wrong, and how you handled it?
I don't I don't think anything on our project went well, like as planned. There's always issues.
Yeah.
Some are higher than others, right? Sorry. One that I could think of is the project you and I worked on, City Hall, if
Oh
you
wow.
remember.
Yeah.
So during design, what City Hall, it's for listeners, is one of the project at 240 Spark Street. So what ended up happening on that project during design stage, we did a test on the chillwater network to make sure that we could shut the chillwater network,
Hmm.
for the entire year. So at that time, as you know, I could see a smile, so you know where I'm going with this. Um, so at the design stage, the operation team conducted few tests, and they said, yeah, it was succeeded. We don't need to do anything further. You could shut down the system, and you could do our work. Unfortunately, during construction, the same test was not positive. It came, unfortunately, it was negative. So what we had to do, we had to implement this called a bypass, which what it is it allows the operators, and it allows the client and the building to operate without any interruption on their services. Unfortunately, this was not part of the design. So what ended up happening, we all, again, a good communication. We all came together. We sat on what, not really sat, but because we're working remotely, we came as a team, and we troubleshoot some ideas and say, okay, well, this is what needs to be done. A bypass is required, and everybody came together and we worked collectively, and we got the approval from the tenant and we got the approval from the client. And I think within a matter of 1 month, if I'm not wrong, correct me if
Yeah, it
I'm
was
wrong,
quick.
it was
Yeah.
quick, right? So we got it resolved. So imagine we didn't do the shutdown.
Yeah.
We would be still doing the
Wow.
project today,
Yeah.
right? So
We'd still be hashing this out.
exactly. So one of the challenges, we have many challenges, but that's something that was costly, but was much required
Hmm.
to satisfy all the 22 floors, right? Or 11 floors, the city house?
11 floors.
Or
Yeah.
the 11
But
tenants.
2 towers.
Two
So
towers.
22 floors.
22
yeah,
floors. Right?
yeah.
Imagine not having to have
Yeah.
done that, right? So, there's many scenario we had in the same project, but this one is on top of my list that, it was such a short time because it happened, I think, during the holidays. We had to come up with a plan, come together, and, the client was on board. Everybody was on board, and it could have been a disaster, but ended up being
Good. Yeah.
exactly a big win-win for both the tenant, us, and the project team. So
I remember from that specific event, when the contractor sent in the quote, I remember I nearly fell off my chair. It wasn't what I was expecting at all. Yeah,
yeah,
that was a good one.
yeah.
Thank you. How do you stay current in the with industry developments and emerging technologies related to project management?
This is one of the things that I'm lacking a little bit, but I am active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So that's how I'm unfortunately not active on social media as much as I should. But I do follow on LinkedIn. You could follow, for example, I follow PMP. I follow Offsite. So certain thing that interests me, I keep an eye on. But I should be focusing more on other platform as well. But for now, as it stands, those two website or program that I'm following, and that's kind of how I found the PM podcast
Okay.
because through LinkedIn and it guided me through the website, and I say, okay. And another thing that I found out, I didn't know you could use your phone to listen podcasts. And
Okay.
I found out through LinkedIn, someone was talking about it, and I said, So, this I wouldn't really call them as technology, but there's always these tricks and tools that you could learn from. Many people use LinkedIn for many different reasons. One being obviously for job search, and connect. And that's how I found out, and that's kind of how, as we speak today, that's how I kind of stay on top of it. So
Good.
yeah.
Good. Thank you. Can you talk about a project that required managing remote teams? Well, I mean, especially now, post-pandemic, and how do you approach this to ensure that teams are successfully working together?
Yeah, I mean, you brought a good point. Pandemic, right? So I remember back in March 2020, when the pandemic hit, and we had to adapt quickly. I still remember. I think I had 3 or 4 times a week. I was connecting with the superior, just to make sure that we have all the equipments we need because nobody was prepared for the
No.
pandemic, right? So I mean, BGIS is flexible. We were working remotely. We go to site, or we go to your client, or we go work from home, but to prepare for the pandemic, no one was available, right? So what I'm very proud as an organization is we came together quick, right? We came together and we had they given us all the tools we needed to work remotely. They were very flexible. They said you could purchase monitors, you could purchase mic, you could purchase whatever you need so that you work pretty much same as you're working at home. So that was quite impressive.
Okay.
And in many circumstances we could only think about negative on the pandemic, but one positive thing we could think about is productivity. And I think we have proven again and again and again how productive we are despite the pandemic, and that was quite impressive even to the senior level. And even today when you talk to anybody, you could say, how do you even do it?
Yeah.
Because when I got hired, I always thought that this industry needed legwork. Don't get me wrong, it does, but we have proven again that we could do this remotely. And like I said, we had all the support and team was collaborating. We do video calls. It's not, yes, we miss that interaction like you and I are having today, but indirectly we were doing that through video calls. More and
Yeah.
more people are doing, like, there's Skype calls, there's Zoom calls, there's many platforms that promotes that. And I'm really thinking, this could be the future.
Oh yeah. I agree.
I do definitely miss the interaction, but like, if you really to ask me an honest opinion, the productivity, because you take less break, or you don't have to stagger your meetings. Your meeting is that at 10:01 you're on the second meeting,
Yeah.
right? You don't have to go and greet your client. Everybody's on time. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of positive happen working remotely. And despite the few negative, I think we could all agree that the positivity is productivity is going up. We successfully delivered how many projects, so that's
Yeah. That's
big
exciting.
thanks to working remotely, right?
Yeah.
So I think it would have been a little difficult other way around, but that's kind of the positive I could think of working remotely, and how we came together, starting March, and we're still going, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I could think of.
Because I think most, well, I wouldn't say most, from what I was aware, a lot of school of thoughts were saying that co-location in project management is very important. You have to have people around you. But with softwares like Microsoft Teams, I think I probably interact with more people than if I'm at the office, where I tend to put my noise canceling headset on to not be disturbed by other people, and then hash out some work and maybe not reach out to other people as much, or unless it's planned meetings. But with Teams, you can just call somebody. Oh, do you have a minute? What's that? Okay, perfect, thank you, and then go back to yeah.
Yeah, and we have done that how many times,
Oh
right?
yeah,
It's
quite
often like,
often.
hey, 5 minutes, sure. Like, sometime in the office, it's not always easy,
No,
right? It's, let's go for a meeting room, and it's
it's
that struggle.
booked.
It's
Yeah,
everything is booked, nothing
yeah,
is usually available. You want to do a quick meeting? No problem. How many times we gathered, like, with a matter of seconds,
yeah,
right? And
exactly.
how many times, like, we do follow ups? It's easy. Hey, I have a problem. It's great. Come on, let's go. We don't have to run here. Let's run, find a meeting room. Like I said, you know, I only see the positive of working remotely, but I think most people prefer the hybrid options. But I think that's kind of what we are focusing toward. But
Hmm.
it's like I said, it's a lot of positive on working remotely. So,
Yeah.
so
Well, as you know, I like working from the office, but it's mainly because I don't like working from home. It's not that I don't like working remotely. I'm going to plug this place. We're at G-Man Studios in Ergon co-working space, and it's absolutely wonderful co-working space. And I could definitely see myself working from here remotely.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I
Yeah,
think I could even live here.
yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a it feel very cozy and luxury at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. Ranjit, let's talk about how you handle scope creep on project. Sorry, and how do you stay on budget and on schedule?
Um, as you know, scope creep, it's not always negative. It could be negative or positive, right? You often try to avoid either or in any given scenario, right? You always wanted to a clear scope of work, schedule, and budget. So, in order to be on top of it, these three items needs to be very, very well detailed uh, and precise, right?
Hmm.
And like I said, sometime scope creep could be good. There's a new emerging technology, or a good example, we chose a certain pumps. Oh,
Yeah,
that pump is obsolete, and there's a better pump for better price and better productivity, and it's quicker, and it's more efficient, right? So you really have to think what are the scope creeps are, right? And to answer your question, to avoid it, it's those three things. Have your scope of work very clearly outlined, and crystal clear as possible, because in any given project you always have the opportunity to review, like, in different variety of stages. Like, example, like the project we worked on, we have many stages that way we
hmm,
could review with many, many, many stakeholders. So that opinion, that option is available for anybody to say, hey, what if you do this or that, right? So you always want to make sure you give that option. So that's what the scope of work is, very, very important. And then from the scope of work, obviously, comes the schedule and budget. So those three items, in my opinion, if if you stay on top of it, you could avoid any scope creep. So that's what I would say.
very good. Thank you. And to close the interview portion, what advice would you have for someone who's just starting out in project management? What would be your the number one thing that you would say?
I would use my personal experience on this. Don't give up. You know, trust yourself. I remember when I started at BGIS, the first 3 4 months it was quite overwhelming.
Hmm.
Not in a bad way, because any project management company or firm that you join is there's tons and tons and tons of process, tons of work instruction that you need to understand. To date, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know everything, right? So in the beginning, you'll feel like, what am I getting to? So if you stay focused, if you trust yourself, trust your judgment, don't give up, you'll be fine. That's what I did when I started at working at BGIS. And there's a lot of people to help out, right? And when I started, I still remember the very first day I started at BGIS, I was said, here, write a proposal, like write an RFPQ. I'm like, okay, I had no idea, and I was so stressed. And I said, this is a challenge. I'm up for it. So I trust myself. I trust my judgment. I said, no, there's a reason why I'm here. I'm capable of doing. So as long as you fight through yourself and you trust yourself, you pass that. It's called like the baby step, right? You
Hmm.
pass that first stage, everything else come natural, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Anybody, it could be PGIS, it could be any firm. Even tomorrow, like you graduated from Carleton University, and you're back on the job field. Nobody expect you to know everything,
Yeah.
right? So it's quite normal as a human being, I think, to feel fear. But if you learn, and if you say, you know what, I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna fight my fear. I'm gonna stay through it. I think you'll be fine. That's what I did anyway. And look, it's been 4 years. I'm still here. So
Yeah. Good job.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. Especially we're working on very large projects, and it could be daunting, to look at those. So that's a great way to stay in the game and tell yourself, yeah, keep going.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I often tell a lot of people that I work together, there's no stupid questions. Don't be shy.
Yeah.
I'd rather you ask the question, and I try to help you, than the other way around. Then you know the help is there, but you're not asking, and then you just go and burn out yourself, which is not good for you and good for the
Yeah.
person that you work with, right? So there's a lot of things that I've learned throughout, which I am applying, and I'm very grateful for the mentors that I had in the past, was mentoring me and say, hey, do this, do that, and that's what I've been doing, and that's kind of what I'm trying to tell people that I work with. I always tell them, you don't know, it's fine, but there's help.
Yeah.
Don't be shy to ask questions. There's no stupid question. Just ask the questions, and you'll find the answer throughout either me or someone else, and then you'll be like, this is actually an easy question. It's not a stupid question,
Yeah.
right? So I often see people telling me that, hey, I'm grateful that I asked that question. I'm like,
Yeah.
thank you. It's good to hear that feedback, right?
Yeah. Because the thing is, probably there's other people in the meeting or in the room who have the same question and they're not asking it. Yeah.
And sometimes it's not easy to break the ice. I'm a very shy person, but that is something that I work to develop as I grew. And don't be shy. Just ask a question. Sometimes as you know, English is my fourth language. Sometimes I think about, am I saying this correctly?
Mm.
Because sometimes I'm like, am I talking too fast? Or am I not pronouncing it too clearly? Whatever it is, just the first step is ask, right?
Yeah.
So you ask, it's out of your chest. Now it's someone else to respond, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I view it. So
That's good.
yeah,
Thank you.
no problem.
Well, Ranjit, to conclude our interview, I have a few more questions that I'd like to ask you related to technology and artificial intelligence. So what kind of advancement do you see for the project management industry in the future?
I wouldn't be surprised AI replaces in everything we do.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, it's I don't recall that the AI, that lady, that the super intelligent lady, I forgot her name. I don't know.
Yeah, I know which one you're
You're
talking
talking about,
about.
right?
Yeah.
So I was listening to this conversation that Will Smith was having with that lady. I couldn't believe that was an AI. I just couldn't believe it. That's how well it's structured. So we often joke around saying that AI would replace us, but if you think about it, it's quite possible, because how human thinks. Imagine an AI replace you without emotions.
Yeah.
Like, that's like a big win, right? So I wouldn't be surprised, if I want that to happen. Obviously, no, but is it going to happen? time will tell, right?
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't be surprised that, there's, with the technology and how fast we are growing, it's some genius would come up with an idea that, what, hey, why not project management, So it could happen, I wouldn't be surprised if it does. Hopefully not soon.
No, hopefully not. Yeah, exactly.
I still love what I do, but
Yeah. I
you know,
still have a lot of projects to manage.
exactly. So time will tell, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, Ranjit, thank you very much for this interview. It was great to have you on this show and learn more about your professional career and your development. And thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you having me here, and thanks for the opportunity. Like I said, you helped me do something on my checklist. One of my resolution this year was to do something new, something outside my comfort zone, and you helped me achieve both of them today. So,
There you
thank
go.
you for that.
You're very welcome. And we both earned one PDU.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you for listening and have a great day.